You don't want me to go into that, Jeannie.
Okay, after all the big tournaments.
No,
we have
no, no, of course.
chess
No, no,
houses.
I am not saying they're not social.
Well, I'm just
Yeah,
saying
sure.
that this was an example, because I felt that the reason the chess team did so well, you know, the U.S. chess team in the Olympiad, was because they were friends. It's amazing how you play clubhouse till 4 in the morning and you have
Oh, yeah, I was there.
a few drinks, right?
And Lev and Yasser were the two best, or Lev and MVL, you know, make the two best partners. No, of course they're still social, but the point is now there's a level of mistrust that has been introduced that I am very, you know, concerned about.
Do we have more questions from the audience?
So Sunil, you said you researched all the U.S. presidents. In your opinion, who was probably the strongest U.S. president chess player?
You know, that's hard to say, you know, and if you include Franklin in that crowd, I mean, maybe Franklin, you know, was the best, but one thing I found in doing the research, there was this game that was attributed to Benjamin Franklin. I used to show my classes, and I said, well, what a genius, this Franklin guy, you know. And then doing the research, I come across the same game, and it wasn't Franklin who played it, right? So then I suspected a rat, and I wrote to the author who had, you know, put it in, and I said, listen, I think you got it wrong. Franklin didn't play this game, you know. But what happens often is that, you know, a mistake is made, and it is just repeated by others who do not bother to check their sources.
Did you run into that as well with your book, Peter? When you're researching some of the chess history?
I'm not recalling that much.
Yeah.
I do recognize that. Well, the thing is, I did a lot of research in the public Royal Library in The Hague. They have one of the largest collections in the world on chess and checkers. Well, draughts together, it's over 30,000 books, and I think the big majority is on chess actually. Even Mr. Ansel is would be proud of it, I think. So you could say, why would you add another book to it, right? And you do notice that there's so many books that have talked about books and about topics before and before and before. So in that sense, it was a bit of a challenge because I am telling a lot of stories, but to tell them maybe in a bit of a more modern way and try to find the most relevant ones and put them together, and yeah, also to have this place where you can actually find them together, because there's different books on chess and arts. There's a single book that Chess in the Movies that gives by Bob Masala that gives like 20,000 examples of chess being in movies and series. And there's so much out there. It's unbelievable actually. We have such a rich game, and so my first part, I hopefully did a good job in choosing the nice ones and telling them in a new way to an audience that likes to read it like that today, and combining them with modern history, the technological history that we are going through these days, the effect of the internet, the influencers. So in that sense, there's also a lot of new untold material, I hope.
Do we have any more questions from the audience?
So this is a question for the panel, because I don't usually get a chance to ask this sort of question to people who know so much about chess history, but it sort of strikes me that at some point, you know, like in the 18th century, that chess is primarily played by the aristocracy, and then of course in the Soviet Union, everyone is playing chess, so it strikes me that there's like a period somewhere where there's maybe an adjustment or an inflection point where it goes from the aristocracy to many more people playing it. And if anyone could speak to that.
I'll just throw some ideas out. You know, in the old days, people import books, and books weren't so readily available. So a lot of the books like Filidos, Lamendis des Échecs, or the old Italians, they were like manuscripts that were written for particular sponsors or particular people. So the information was not widely disseminated, and that is the first problem. After World War II, the Soviet Union, the rise of the Soviet Union as a chess power, what basically happened was that they introduced chess into basically what Genie did to the Boy Scouts here. They're young pioneers. They introduced chess as in the young pioneers, and everybody played chess. So it was a question of numbers, as was as was mentioned yesterday with the numbers. So that sort of brought it down to the proletariat, so to speak, right? And I think that made a big difference.
I can add to that already in the Great Russian Empire during the last Tsars, chess was quite big already. The famous players of the time, like Rubinstein and Shikorin, Alyekhin. Though a lot of those players were actually from what we now would call Greater Russia or Eastern European area. Then we had the revolution in 1917, and the thing was, some of the highest officials, including Lenin himself, they were actually chess players. So that helped a lot. And they were already in 1925, we can see a first clear example of chess being a propaganda medium, because they were hosting the most luxurious tournament in Moscow, in what we would call a five-star hotel. I think the games were played in a theater, an art or a big art museum. The players were paid royally. All their costs were paid. So the top of Europe participated, and it was basically to show we have this new nation. We're building this new nation, and look what we're doing. And it continued also because the successes came. It continued to be a way of showing, look at us being smart, because chess was always also then, of course, the example of the smart game. If you're good at chess, you're intelligent, right? That's sort of the simple version of it, and they were definitely using that image, and that's also why it was such a big thing in '72, and it sort of all collapsed in one match.
I mean, if you look at pictures from the Olympiad in Havana in 1966, right? 68 was Lucano, right? So the 1966 Olympiad in Havana, there was a picture on the cover of British Chess Magazine or Chess, I'm not sure which one, but it showed Fidel Castro and Che Guevara watching the Olympiad. And I noticed the guns, but they're watching the Olympiad, and I mean everybody's playing chess. I mean, that's it went to Cuba. It had a world champion, right? I mean, everybody plays chess. So what I noticed also in '78 when I came back from the Olympiad in Buenos Aires, I decided to go to Rio because Korchnoi was giving an exhibition, and what struck me was the absolute grassroots popularity of chess. Korchnoi was giving a sample. There were people climbing the trees next to the building, hanging from branches just to watch Korchnoi do this exhibition. It's just amazing.
All right. I think we'll take one or two more questions if there are any, but I wanted to suggest that you connect with John McCrary, who's a chess historian, and he has some information too. And before I do these last questions, I wanted to remind you all that if you have a wristband for Gary's talk later, make sure you have it when you go up to the theater so that you will be allowed in. And lunch will start at 11:45. So with that, are there any other questions? One last.
This question is for Dr. Sultan. Being that your grandfather played so many famous players. Were there any famous players that he was friends with that maybe championed him, his cause, that, hey, you know, he should get some credit, being that I played him and he's very good, and, you know, can he, you know, kind of try to boost him up or get him the accolade that he deserved? And do you have any idea possibly what his rating could have been compared to some of the other players of his time?
To the second part, I'm sorry, I'm not a professional, chess scholar or whatever, so I can't comment on that. I just know the league, or so maybe the professional sort of chess analysts can answer that question better. In terms of the players, we discussed this at length in the book. So for instance, he was quite close to Yates, who was a British player, but unfortunately Yates died in a gas explosion. And we talk about, unfortunately it was the contours of Khan's life in some way were predetermined sort of because of the times he lived in. And I guess it was a limitation maybe of all the players around him or just the society around him that perhaps stopped them from giving him his due. And it just took many decades for us to be able to tell this story, and we're just very honored and grateful that we now have the chance, and we're working with an excellent publisher on it. And it's finally, it's been a long journey, and we've had so many friends along the way. So I don't know about, probably my grandfather did not get that opportunity, but certainly we have finally had that opportunity, and we're very grateful for it and happy to do this. All right. Thank you again to our presenters, and thank you all for coming. And then I've got a short message from one of the organizers.
All right, let's give one more round of applause to the presenters. And I know Emily spoke to this a little bit. We do have our wristbands coming up. Navy blue will get you into the theater with the world champion. And then the adjacent theater is for the red wristbands, where it'll be live streamed, and you'll be in that adjacent theater. The theater, if you walk straight out of the Corazon upstairs, where we were last night, if you walk from the Corazon to the hotel check-in desk, you're going to pass right by the theater. So it's very available right there in the lobby. Lunch is supposed to be served at 11:45. It might be a little bit earlier. Feel